Thank you very much for having me. Notice how Brian stumbled on saying that it was a pleasure to work with me. He's like, it was an experience working with her. So today we are talking about Angular plus Jamstack triple equals Jamgular. Jamgular is not a real word. I am trying to make it happen. I believe it should happen so that I don't have to say full stack Angular in the Jamstack or any of those word combinations. So if you hear me say Jamgular, just know that you have to use that phrase from now on forevermore. Good. So as Brian said, my name is Tara Minixick. I work at Netlify, which is one of the sponsors of this conference, and I started working there because I used their product so much. People most know Netlify for kind of being a really easy way to deploy your sites and put it on, reliable content delivery networks, which we'll talk about what that phrase means. But I use it a lot too for like local development, and also you can set up a bunch of like webhooks, do auth very easily, split testing. And one thing with Angular is we don't always have a very clear continuous integration, continuous deployment setup. And Netlify gives you a really great Git integration to make that happen. So that's why I started working there, because I was like, I really like these things. I would like to make them even better. And they said yes, and I said okay. And as Brian said, I'm also an Angular GDE, a what I like to call nerdy mom to a now 2-year-old, and one that is, yes, going to come at any moment. Now, I am in my 9th month of pregnancy, but I can still code and I can still talk. So at least for the next hour, we're good. I hope I didn't just jinx myself. Okay. So I want to cover what we'll be talking about today. We're going to just, Angular is pretty new to the Jamstack arena, maybe kind of one of the newer frameworks to be jumping into it. So I want to cover not only what the Jamstack is a little bit, since we're at a Jamstack conference, but you might need to know, because you're at a Jamstack conference, what the Jamstack is. And I just want to drill it in with like a succinct explanation and then some tech to back up what's actually happening in that Jamstack architecture, and then specifically how Angular is incorporated to make Jamgular. And then we'll talk about a little bit of like why even bother to do this, and then we'll jump into code. So it's going to be like half what we call talkie-docky on my team, and then half cody-cody. So what is this? I think it's very important to basically cover this a little bit each time to get rid of this FUD we have around the Jamstack architecture. FUD is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And FUD, these traits tend to be quite dev-eccentric when it comes to technologies. I know I'm constantly skeptical of things that are put in front of me. I'm like, why is it better? How is this different? Tell me why. Ain't nothing but a heartache. So Jamstack architecture is basically a way of thinking about how we build apps. And I'll just say the UI is compiled, the front end is fully decoupled, and data is pulled in as needed. That's all I'm going to say about that. Let's leave it very succinct in that way. And then talk about this, the tech that we have behind it. So we're saying that we're generating cacheable static assets. We're deploying to a CDN or content delivery network. We're using client-side JavaScript to utilize homemade or third-party APIs. I think that's a big thing. They can be APIs that you make, or they can be APIs from third parties if you want to delegate work, and utilize things like serverless functions. So one thing that's really important to me is the DX of Jamstack. You're creating a better development experience through automated workflow. So I'm trying to limit the words, so we'll move on. But speaking of the words, I want to I'll go over some words that are more of like Jamstack kind of glossary that some may not be familiar with, like content delivery network. So these are really powerful dumb servers. And we talk about dumb components in Angular, so I feel like it's okay to call other things like servers dumb. But they're so geographically distributed edge nodes. So they're scattered throughout the globe. And they take the contents that you generate that live in your origin server. And as soon as a user requests that, it sends it to a edge node that is closest to the person requesting it. And that's how you're going to get those things delivered fast, is because it's smart enough to say, hey, we need to direct this content as close to the user as possible. But it also has this redirect knowledge that says something's going wrong with this edge node that's closest. What's the next closest? Let's send that information there. So it's still as close as we can get, but it has that redirect knowledge, so it's not going to fail. So then you get it to be more reliable. Next, what is Angular in the Jamstack? So Angular is pretty much working on the front end, right? Like when you're using Angular, you're building out your site. So the only part that really starts getting affected by the Jamstack is that being able to pre-render your assets. And you have two choices to do that in Angular. You can use Scully, which is the one and only static site generator for Scully. And that just came out last year by the Hero Devs team. I'll point you to more resources on that. But the Angular community has been asking for something like this for years. And we wanted it to be able to make the sites faster in delivering them, but also so we could have something on the page that web crawlers could read so we could do better with SEO. So now we have that, and it's really easy to use. It's what we're going to step through when we start coding. But there's also Angular Universal, which is actually the Angular server-side rendering kind of package. But in that package, we have the pre-render capabilities, thanks to Minko, that we can use that and not particularly focus on the hybrid rendering part of Angular Universal, but just focus on that pre-render. And I'll show you what that looks like in 2 slides. And then we're still putting those assets on a CDN, so it gets to the user, gets as close to the user as possible. We're still dynamically grabbing data from APIs and by triggering serverless functions and webhooks. And we're still decoupling and modularizing that development process using Git workflows and automation. So this is the main page. You can find it on angular.io that talks about Angular Universal. They're working on better documentation. I'm hoping that we can get even more documentation on here to step you through the whole process. But until then, I have some resources that I'll share with you. But I just want to show you real quick what this looks like. So you just use the ng add schematics to add ng universal / express engine, because this will add some server code to your code, but you won't build that out and ship it. We'll actually be using this right here in this example to just pre-render. So once you have that, you can see that it adds a few things, but specifically in your package.json, you can see that you now have these commands that you can run, including pre-render. And so that's basically going to, we'll throw it in here and run it right now. So this is just a standard Angular application that just has 3 routes, 3 different pages. So it goes and it builds out the actual application and it bundles it all up like it would with a regular ng build. But then also you can see here, it pre-renders the routes that we have. So then if we look inside of our distributables folder, dist, and look inside universal pre-render where they usually live, we now have a browser folder. And in here you can see there's a directory for all of the routes that we have on our page. And inside of that directory, you'll see that we have the HTML rendered for that page. So there's a bunch of stuff in there. And then you can see at the top, it's a HTML doc with your styles and everything you have for that home page. So then when you want to ship this code, ship the pre-rendered code, you'll be shipping the publish directory you'll use is this universal pre-render, the name of the project /browser to get your static assets. So what is a static site generator? Especially if you're an Angular developer, you may be like, what is that? And we have one. This is what it is. Every major framework and language has one, and it's basically, it generates all of the pages of a site at build time, and it does it whenever there's a change to the site. So that way, whenever there's a change, it generates all of the HTML that you need, so that when you're deploying these things, when the client requests them, you're just giving them these static assets. So that makes it not only easy to cache, it makes it harder to hack and get to the users faster. So the one that we are lucky enough to have, is Scully. You can find this information at, let me make sure I always somehow get this site right. Yeah, Scully.io. And you can run through their documentation. There's a lot of things that they can do, and they recursively go through the site. So if you have something like a directory that has blog posts inside of it, it will recursively go through those and make sure they hit up every route, and you can customize it and manage all the routes that it chooses. But also, there's a lot more that you could do with state management in here. And as far as like getting your routes and manipulating them, there's a lot of tooling for that. And they're trying to build out more of a plugin system as well to make the process even smoother. So that's worth checking out, and we'll use that when we go into the code section. Okay, the next step we're going to talk about is, why are we even bothering to do this? I'm going to quickly run through some examples of people that had a really fast or like really good experience with it. But really, when it comes down to it, you'll want to try it out on your site. I know that you see the speed difference, and that's very exciting, but also just the developer experience in general is the thing that always blows me away. I'm going to touch on each of these topics though. So Smashing Magazine, this is like kind of the beginning of the turn of the Jamstack era. They switched all of their e-commerce and their huge content site to a more Jamstack architecture, and saw faster performance from 800 milliseconds to 80. Perfect Keto, I thought this was really great, is they basically started using headless WordPress. Headless is basically decoupling the UI from the API. So you're able to get information in, but that information doesn't care where it goes. And so they put this architecture up using the Jamstack architecture, and were able to improve their load time from 6.2 seconds, which is bonkers. Nobody's waiting around for 6.2 seconds, to 750 milliseconds. This is something that I think a lot of people are on monolithic CMS architectures. So making that change, you can see that Cornerstone is able to have their page loads 25% faster, but also the iteration and making new content was able to get to their site 30% faster, which is kind of thanks to the developer experience, which we'll touch on. And Citrix was able to, I like this, and they reduced their cost by 65%. How? It's because they delivered faster, like way ahead of their deadline. Nobody, I shouldn't say nobody in tech delivers before their deadline, but like, I can't tell you the last time I did that. It's like having a contractor like work on a kitchen and be like, we're done 2 weeks early. And it's just like, what did you break? But no, it's just a better DX. And so like we see this with Loblaw Digital, and they're saying Netlify empowers our engineering teams to launch websites and campaigns in minutes with no ops, a goal that has often been a pipe dream in our industry. I relate so heavy to this. And even there's a whole blog post by Tom Preston Werner about developer experience, and he has this quote in here that says, "The only thing that matters to me when it comes to developer experience is this: can I turn what's in my mind into finished product quickly and easily or not?" The best thing that you can do for your customers and your product is have happy developers that feel empowered to make that product, because then you actually are able to turn things over very quickly, get things up on the site. If it becomes drudgery, if people get blocked all the time, it's big wear on humans and on your delivery dates, therefore your product. So I touch on this a bit. And one thing that I love the most is the Git workflow of this process. And it's using Git to organize and check code for many devs, especially now that so many of us are distributed now. This really helps. You're utilizing Git repos and the functionality like cloning, forking, pull requests, merge checks, and more to create an easily distributed and easily checked and quick interaction development process and quick iteration. So those, I talk about the checks in here. We do this. This is how we deliver content for our blog. And we have all the checks that are, making sure that we have the required tests done and we're following certain rules. There are so many things that we do every single time we push code in. Let's not have to think about that. Let's automate it. And what else is really nice about that is like all of these are immutable builds and atomic deploys. So with atomic deploys, you're basically saying something's changed. We're going to put up a whole new version with that change instead of changing things individually. And we had a tweet about that from my coworker, Jason Langsdorff and Jonathan Speak. So Jonathan was saying, like, we all know that, like, don't ship on Fridays. How many of us stick to it? I don't know. I've never been on teams that stick to that very well. And Netlify is no different. But the thing, like, so, we have all these commits going in, but we have the functionality because of the Git workflow that lets us say, okay, this is an atomic deploy of this change, of this change. So there are all these immutable builds. If somebody like Jason breaks something, Jason never breaks anything. But if that were to happen, we can easily roll back to the build that we know is the working one. And what that gives is this empowerment and this confidence in developers to be able to make these iterations, not fast and sloppy because we have checks, but we're able to make them in the confidence that if for some reason something breaks, we can roll back and not feel too much shame, dependent on your team. Okay, so I want to see if I can see how much. Yeah, we got about 11 minutes left. We're going to start jumping into the code and talk about the resources or like how we're even going to do this. I saw the word resources and immediately my brain just said, speak the word on the page. So we're going to go ahead and go into our terminal. Feel free to let Brian know or in the chat know that if you can't see anything or if it's not big enough, and they'll relay the message to me. But we're going to go ahead and jump in and we're going to do a few things right off the bat that we might be used to. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe type properly. We're going to use the Angular CLI to create a new project. I'm going to make sure I'm on track. Alrighty, increase. You said 1, but I'm going to do 2. More. How's that? Ooh, no problem. Easy fixes. Okay. So let's say the Jamgular. And we want to go ahead and just avoid the questions and just answer them right off the bat. So we'll say that we are going to add routing and we are going to set a style to CSS and we'll let that run. So if you're familiar with the Angular CLI, it's basically building out this whole skeleton app for us, including all of some like the main component, adding all of the config things we need that will add unit testing and give us all of the commands for serving it locally and building it up. And we're going to have this routing. We're going to make this project. We're going to make a few pages and that we can set up the routing for so we can see how it pre-renders. But before we go into pre-rendering, we'll push it up and deploy it onto Netlify with a few commands. And then we will add Scully. And I will keep an eye on my time. And wherever we stop, I'll give you the resources to keep going with tutorials or with videos that I've created. And that will let you make your projects or Jamstackify your own Angular products if you have them. So we have this running. We're going to change into the folder, and we'll go ahead and clear out what we have in the skeleton, which is in app component HTML, just by going to the bottom and deleting to the top. And we'll go ahead and add something that says that we really are here. The jam.dev. All right, so we'll save that out. And then let's go ahead and just use the CLI. So this is ng generate module. And what did I want to make? We'll make home, and we'll set the route to home, and the module to app.module. And we'll give them all of our information forever. And then we're going to make 2 more, and we'll say change home to about, but don't be fooled that it's going to change all of the words we need it to. And then we'll also make one that says, let's just say, sorry, I don't know what just happened there. About access services. All right, so now we have modules for this, and I just want to change the routing because it does this. We can make that root route our home route. Oh, remind me, next time I'll open code. This is, I always forget. Okay, so we have our routing set up, and we're going to go ahead and let me just go ahead and start the Git workflow. And what's nice is that we now have the GitHub CLI. So before I do that, I want to make sure, did everything? Yeah. Let me do this real quick though, because I don't like having it here. And then we will say, what do we have changed? We have all these new things. So we'll add that, and we'll say git commit adds modules and stuff and routing. Sure. Then that's good. Let's go ahead and say GitHub repo create. Yeah, that works. Description. It's so cool. I always try to put like emoticons in there, but I'm not gonna waste your time. Yeah, that's what I want. So it's going to spin that up, and now we have things that we can push up. I have a alias called push up, but it's like git push set stream origin, and then we just have to put the working branch that we're on, which is nice because then we just say push up main. And now we have our kind of like Git workflow started up. So we have a repo. If somebody from my team was like, hey, I want to make a fix on your change, they just go to GitHub and they, either fork the repo, clone it, make a PR. So we have this easily managed project where we can each person can pull it down and make the changes, and we have a central source of communication of working on that project along with the code in one place. It's just so good. But now we want to deploy it, because I could just show you ng-serve right now and serve it up and show you on localhost, but let's go ahead and make it live into the world. If you don't already have the Netlify CLI installed, this is the command to do that. npm netlify-cli-g, that's npm install, and to do it globally. And then we want to, so I already have it installed. So I'm going to make my Netlify configuration file, which is netlify.toml in the base directory of your application. And this is going to tell Netlify a few things. First of all, when you build this project, the command for building it is ng build prod. And then it's going to build that into the directory that I want you to publish, which for Angular is always dist and the project name. What did we call it? The jam? Oh gosh, let's see. What is this? The Jamgular. Okay. Jamgular. And then a special thing with Angular is that all of the routing is handled by the Angular router. So this is an instance where you can use Netlify for all your Jamstack Angular stuff, but you can just use it for Angular. But you'll want to make sure that your redirects are handled for page refreshes. So let me make sure it is redirects. So the other thing is just in general, this is where you can do all your redirects. There is another way to make a redirects file in your Angular application and save it, the reference to it, in your angular.json configuration file. I like this because this is also where I would put all my functions and my build plugins information. So I like working inside the netlify.toml. But in general, redirects, you can have it as a redirects file in your Angular application. So we want to say that just everything, we're going to send it to the index.html file that Angular creates, and we're going to give it a status of 200. Redirects are super powerful, so powerful that I'm not even going to talk about it. But they're very powerful, so I highly recommend going. Does this say I have 1 minute left? Yeah. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and push this up and add. I'm just going to do it as I talk about it. So we have that toml. We'll say netlify init. Oh, you know what? Let's add this real quick. Git status. Okay. Netlify init. It's fine. It'll work. So make a new site from me. Jam, because I think that shouldn't exist. Good, it doesn't. So it grabs that information that we just put into the toml file, that ng-build prod, and where the project lives. The functions folder, we won't worry about that today, but it's a good default to just set it to functions. And then it's going to go ahead and add that to add the deploy key, and you'll get an email from GitHub that says, oh, a key has been something, something. And it's in the process of now deploying that site to Netlify. Bad gateway. That's okay. I'll show you. What? Well, let's push this code out. Let's see what happened in the dashboard. So then you hit Netlify open, NTL open, and you can actually, oh, I have my JavaScript disabled. You can actually see on the dashboard, we can see, try to figure out what happened. So it's still deploying the site. We can look at the logs to see if we see anything. Everything's building appropriately. So there are no errors yet. So that may have just been something funny in the CLI. But we'll go ahead and add these changes. Netlify. And we'll push that up, which will actually, that push is going to trigger another build. But it's fine because we can see here that this is up. And we can see that our routes are working. Oh, if you type them right. Our routes are working. What? Oh, it's, did I make a services one? Homeworks? I may have spelled it wrong somewhere because spelling is not what I do best. Okay. I may have broken something there. But that's okay because we're going to pre-render it anyway. And I'm just going to show you real quick how to add Scully to pre-render it. And then I swear I'll wrap up. So now that you have your site, you just have to say ng add, again with the schematics, Scully.io init. And that will bring in the Scully library. So you can make all of those changes to make the pre-renders. And then you just need to build it out and then run npm run Scully. And then you'll actually, I'll show you here. You'll just have to change, here it is. I have a whole blog post on it you can check out. You'll just need to change your command to ng build and npm run Scully, and then change where your directory is. But you can check that out here. This blog post is building an Angular Jamstack app with Scully. And I'll just show you real quick. We're going to cancel everything out. Some resources. I'm sorry we didn't get farther into that or further into the code example, but I have a ton of resources. This one I think is really important. The CSS Tricks team made a bunch. If you're ever like, well, how do I do this in the Jamstack? This resource is super great because it shows you CMSs, hosting, e-commerce, data storage. We have a ton of stuff on our blog that covers how to use a bunch of these resources, a bunch of these things in the ecosystem, as well as how to build and start migrating your applications. Jamstack.org, if you're just like, okay, but what is this still? There's a lot of great information here that they're constantly working on. There's the Modern Web Development Jamstack book that's free, you know, in exchange for like your email address. And I made an audiobook version of it too. So if you find yourself washing dishes and staying home and going nowhere, I usually say in the car, but we're like, we don't go in the car anymore. So there's an audiobook version of it there too for free. We have this podcast, Remotely Interesting, that we think is hilarious, but hopefully you find it informative and at least remotely interesting. You can find that at remotelyinteresting.netlify.com. And then we just created a learning platform that's all free, video-based. So if you want to still kind of do this walking through the creation of an Angular Jamstack site with me, that exists here. And then I'm in the process of releasing one soon that talks about serverless Angular, where we walk through the process of building an e-commerce site with serverless functions, with webhooks, touching on APIs and stateless auth. And just in general, we have a bunch of stuff on there and we're building out more and more content. So check that out. Is that wrapped up in enough time?
We still got a little bit of time for some questions. So
Awesome.
I'm going to get to the audience questions right away. So why are redirects powerful? You kind of skipped over that, but I guess as quickly as you can, why are redirects powerful?
I know. So it gives you a lot of power because you're able to do things like, So we have edge handlers at Netlify. And so this is using that redirect knowledge to pass in a function to the redirects. So a user can come to your page and say, request a certain route. And from that route, you can load a function from the CDN, not even from like wherever you're getting your JavaScript, but from the CDN. So it doesn't have to make that round trip. You can grab that function, get the headers from the person requesting it and say, you're on the East Coast. I know that California needs to have this page sent to them. So you're able to customize a lot of information, customize how that interaction happens based on information coming from the user. So, and all it is just a redirect. So I have to, the docs team in Netlify is like, chill out about this. Try not to get too excited so that we can like stabilize like all the things that because you can do a lot with it, but again, with lots of power, Yeah. But I do get excited about them because especially customizing anything that we can for our users to get them the specific information that they want faster is a really great resource. So that's one way that they're very powerful.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm clearly not using them to their full abilities myself, honestly. I didn't even know you could do the redirecting based on like where they are and things like that. So that's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, so next question is Netlify specific. Does Netlify only deploy if tests pass on commit? Is there auto rollback if tests fail after deploy or when deploys happen before tests finish?
So they won't deploy it until the tests have finished. You can set certain things to make it so that like I think we actually talked about this the other day because we were talking about it would be it's something that we all really like the possibility of is to immediately roll back if there's an error, but that should be a setting. So we have to figure out the best way to implement that. But you can set, we have seen users set this up themselves where if there's an error, it will roll back to the latest immutable build that has no errors.
Okay.
But this isn't integrated into Netlify yet.
Yeah, I mean, I know like some of mine are I guess maybe it depends on what tools you're using. Like my Hugo site, like when the build fails, like because I've managed to do it, I managed to break the build, and then and basically I go and I'm like, crap, the site's not going to not be up. No, it's up. The site's up. It's just the build failed. That one never got pushed, right?
Yep.
So, I guess it depends on the types of errors that we're talking about, right? Like if you have some test suites that are testing like front end JavaScript and things like that, maybe it'd be a different story, right?
Yeah, and you can also, you can have it so that you're constantly building on every change to your development server. So you have all the previews, all the site previews, but you're not actually pushing up to prod until you specifically want to do it in production.
Right.
And that's what we do, like with a lot of my side sites, where every single commit that goes through immediately gets built from the non-production branch, from the dev branch. So we can see as the process goes if everything's running smoothly and then push production.
Absolutely, yeah. Branch deploys are like, amazing for testing that stuff. I know I've used it extensively, even to like even kind of soft test, like soft launch a site that I had redone that I wanted users to be able to try it and at least see it, but like, but without pushing it live completely and things like that. It's just amazing how much you can do that way.
And, like, especially like that's another thing as far as the DX, like you want to be able to empower people who have the whole range of technical abilities. So if you're using a headless CMS and allowing content contributors to fill out a form like they're used to, of like, here's the content, here are the authors, here are the pictures, they don't know where that data goes, but you see that go up. And then once they add it, there's like maybe Sarah Drasner has a really good contentful webhook article that you can see every time a contentful addition is made, it triggers a deploy to Netlify, and then you can pass that deploy preview to the content people and say, does this look like how you wanted it to look? And you're not touching any code in that whole process. Like it just, you're empowering as many people as possible to make iterations to the site. And that's how you get your project to just keep iterating and keep bringing new stuff to your users.
Okay, so I got one last question. We got like 3.5 minutes, so it's, you know, succinctly as you possibly can. Is okay. So what? I know you're an Angular fan, obviously, but like, what would be your case? Like, how would you sell Angular specifically as it benefits the Jamstack? Like, what's the benefit of Angular in the Jamstack?
Mostly just Angular's core parts in general, where you're getting everything off the bat. So you never have to pick a router. You never have to figure out how you're doing state management. All of that comes through in Angular. So especially if you have big teams that you need to get on a page right away and just have everything you need in front of you, and including like every time you find a resource for Angular, it's going to be covering the same topics because nobody's varying in how they're doing the routing. Nobody's varying in how you're building out components. Like that's why you have that ng generate command, because it is so opinionated that it's able to do more and more for you. And that's what's great about schematics, Angular schematics too, is that you can integrate like we have one for Netlify, so it adds all of the functionality, signs you into Netlify. Angular Material has it, so when you just need to add those things, it's all right there at your fingertips. And so for collaboration for teams, it's all right there. And then, you know, add Jamstack and then it's perfect. So yeah. I mean,
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I've never messed too much with Angular, but that, I mean, I think it is kind of neat, like that, you know, the opinionated piece, being able to understand stuff right away. I think, you know, having messed with React, everybody seems to do it their own way. So, you know,
yeah.
So that's interesting. All right, so fabulous presentation, Tara. Really appreciate it, and best of luck with the baby. Can't wait to see pictures. So,
Me too.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Tara.
All right. Thanks so much, Matthew. Thank you, Brian. Lovely being here. Thanks, everyone.